capitalism works on the premise that government action is bad, except when it's good for me. It's bad when it's good for somebody else, but it's good when it's good for me. So capitalism has a very hypocritical language about the market. They don't really believe in the market capitalists, right? In fact, the market is in general bad for capitalism.
But do you believe we are getting into a lengthy and waterless depression?
Well, I think that may well happen. That's first of all. And secondly, we are certainly, the last 20 or 30 years have been a relatively free trade, free market-oriented period. We are now into the beginnings of a major protectionist era. Mm-hmm. And the United States is and will be very protectionist. Western Europe is and will be very protectionist. Japan and indeed even China will be very protectionist. And we're going to see enormous protectionist barriers all over the place. And frankly, the word globalization will disappear from the vocabulary of journalists, of scholars, and of politicians within 5 years. Yes, it will be a historic memory that once upon a time there were people who talked about something called globalization.
You defined the United States moment as the one of a tiger at bay. What did you exactly mean?
The metaphor is that the tiger, when he is trapped, when can't get out of a situation, tends to be very ferocious and to strike out in desperation. So the danger is, the real danger for the world and for the United States is that the people in power in the U.S. government will strike out madly. Indeed, I think Iraq was such a striking out. If they now attack Iran, which will be absolute madness from a political and from a military point of view, but they might do it in desperation because the tiger is a
yesterday they are not interested in this.
Well,
they don't have conditions to do it.
In the particular situation of the United States right now, I think the American people certainly don't want another war. The U.S. Army and Marines certainly don't, because they feel stretched and in internal crisis. On the other hand, there are elements in the Air Force who don't mind having their planes way up in the sky dropping bombs. They can't be hit. It's what they exist for. So there's sort of an internal struggle there. And then there are people in the government who say, well, we have to continue our so-called diplomatic efforts because it's madness to do anything else and will irritate everybody in the world and so forth. And there are people who say, as an American admiral said in the Spanish-American War, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. Don't worry, just go, just do it. And will they be powerful enough to do it? They might. I don't rule it out. It will be irrational, it will be crazy, it will be negative for the United States, for Iran, and for the world, but I don't say it can't happen.
The absolutely certain thing is the future, since the past is constantly changing.
That is absolutely correct. And, the past is our imagination of the present as to what it was, and we define the past in terms of what we need in the present. I can hope for the best, but I can't assure you, and I don't offer. History is on nobody's side. I keep repeating that mantra, because too many people believe history is on their side. History is on no one's side. It's the result of what we do, and what we do in this moment of structural crisis. That is to say, every little action, every nano action by every nano person at every nano moment affects the outcomes. That's what I call free will, or the prevailing of free will. So, that's, from my point of view, an optimistic way of looking at it. We can really affect the world in a way that our grandparents or our great-grandparents couldn't, however much they tried, really affect the world. But I also say it's 50-50, right? And that's a lot, not a little, okay? 50-50 is a good chance, not a bad chance, but there's the other 50, you know, and they may, the other side, I think of them as the other side, may win out. I can't guarantee.
That would mean a world with more inequality, probably.
At least as much, and maybe certainly more. It could be a world with a much, how shall I say, tougher, harder hand, in which people get hit on the head much more quickly. I don't know, you know.
And the alternative would be a more democratic and egalitarian world.
But
so what kind of individual action now can help this more egalitarian, the spirit of Porto Alegre world to win?
Well, I see. On the one hand, I think, you know, the kinds of things that all these world social justice movements are doing in terms of trying to awaken people to the reality of what kind of world are we living in, okay? And I think that has an impact. I think there's no question that people learn and are learning and cutting through, what shall I call it, the official lines, which we all incorporate into our mentalities, and now we're trying to get them out of our minds. And I call this unthinking. We're trying to unthink the things that we have been taught in our schools, by our parents, by the governments, by everybody. I think we can try to de-commodify the world. The capitalism is a system which tries to commodify everything, bit by bit by bit, turned everything into a commodity. These days, you know, the latest things have been water, the body, but you know, we can try to create economic processes which are de-commodified and so forth. We can refuse to participate in all kinds of commodified structures. So that's another thing we can do. And we can protest. Because, you know, protests actually, they work up to a point. People who are in power do back down at various points when faced with enough protests. So, you know, try one thing, try another thing. I'm very empirical about this. There aren't a list of perfect solutions. Keep trying, see what happens, see what works. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, stop it and do something else. Because if we are the 99%, there's no point in defining ourselves in such a way that we end up being the 10% politically. If we're the 99%, then we want to pull groups together without diluting it entirely, okay? And that is the political problem for all these movements right now.